Bonjour à toutes et tous, vous écoutez First Print, votre podcast comics préféré pour un nouveau numéro de Super Friends, l'émission qui va à la rencontre des personnes qui font vivre la pop culture et la culture comics par leur métier. Et en ce début d'année 2023, on continue d'accueillir des artistes et des auteurs de tous bords avec la venue de Jacob Phillips en France, donc le dessinateur de New Burn qui vient de sortir chez Urban Comics, mais aussi de Texas Blood qui est disponible chez Delcourt, était présent pour une tournée de dédicaces. Et donc bien sûr, on n'allait pas manquer l'occasion d'aller à sa rencontre pour parler polar notamment. Et pour cette fois, Corentin a le plaisir d'être avec nous aussi.
Salut, ça va?
Ça va très bien, merci Corentin. Donc c'est une interview, un Super Friends qui sera en VO. Donc pas de doublage cette fois, on va laisser Corentin se reposer après Geoff Jones. Mais voilà, on espère que ça vous plaira de toute façon. N'oubliez pas que vous pouvez soutenir le podcast si vous appréciez ces interviews. Et on vous donne rendez-vous en anglais après le générique. And so now in English, we are delighted to have you here, Jacob. Hello.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So we're going to do a very brief introduction about just yourself. Could you introduce yourself because some people might not know who you are and what work you've done until here?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm Jacob Phillips and I draw a couple different comics, New Burn and Texas Blood, and I color a range of different comics, but mostly for my dad, Sean Phillips, such as Criminal, Reckless. What have I just done? Night Fever. I've just finished, and I do freelance illustration and stuff like that as well. So, but mostly drawing comics.
So, what drew you to comic books? Is it the elephant in the room, like your father? I guess.
Yeah, like I was always sort of surrounded by comics my whole life, so it's sort of. I know here it's much more of a thing for kids and adults to read comics, but in the UK it's not much of a thing. It's like once kids read them, adults it's weird to read them. There's much more of sort of like a nerd culture around it. But for me, it was always just normal because it was always in the house. It's just an extension of reading novels or anything else. So I think it was always an option for me to draw comics. I never really planned to do it, but I fell into it and it was always there, so it just made sense.
You made your first foray at 11 years old, I believe.
Yeah. I always drew comics as a kid, sort of do my own Spider-Man stories or anything like that. And then I did my first sort of like self-written, self-published thing when I was 11, about like a character I made up, very thinly veiled self. And I've printed about 20 or 30-ish copies of it and at home and stapled them together and took them to a convention and sat at my dad's table and sold them. I did that a couple of years in a row doing different issues of it. And then I sort of, every couple of years I'd do something new, usually with a different writer. Sort of similar age to me, and we do like when I was like 16 or 14 or whatever, go to a convention, get a table and sell them, and they're all terrible.
I was asking if you were going to collect them at some point.
I have them, and I think I put one of them on my Patreon as like a digital PDF, but it's so bad that I don't know if I can. Like at this, I think when I was 11, it was sort of cute and people, but once you get to like 16 and you're just putting out bad comics, and they're just bad comics, aren't they? So it's, I don't know if I want them to see the light of day particularly, but yeah, so I was doing that, and then I went to art college and they sort of pushed me away from doing comics for 3 years. They weren't into it. I did illustration, so I thought, they'd be open to it, but they weren't into comics at all. Which is interesting because now that I'm somewhat of a success, they get me back in to like talk to the students, and they're much more into comics now. But at the time, they didn't really understand comics. I don't think they were more into sort of real illustration. So I was sort of doing that, and then came back to comics a few years later.
So what do you think is, why do you think comics are special as an art form? What makes it really different from illustrations or paintings?
I think the narrative aspect of it is really interesting. I think with illustration or anything like that, you have a limited amount of space to tell a story. Whereas I think in comics, everything sort of seems infinite to an extent. You can have as many, you can sort of tell whatever story you want in as many pages, within reason as you want, in whatever style that you want, and you can do anything that your imagination can come up with. I think it's sort of got that limitless aspect to it, but it's also so stylized, and taste comes into it so much in terms of artwork and in terms of writing, and it's got that perfect sort of combination of words and pictures, obviously, which I think is just like the perfect way to tell a story. You've got, not everything has to be described, everything can be there for you to see and to experience yourself.
Yeah. How did the decision to go back to comics by coloring your father's work came in the discussion? Because it was Brad Weiser, I think, who made the criminal colors before.
Yeah.
You came through My Heroes, I've always been junkies.
Yeah.
So why this volume in particular, and how did it,
I think,
come to a decision? Because
that book is so stylized in terms of the color. My dad had a very specific look that he was going for with it. So I don't think he wanted Elizabeth to have to do that. Like, I don't, because she's obviously a great colorist and a professional. So he didn't want to come in and say, no, I want you to dumb it down and do it like this. So he was going to do it himself, but he ran out of time. So he got me to do it because he had no problem telling me what to do. So he got me to do it, and then liked what I did. And then he was like, oh, do you want to keep doing it? So I had to sort of learn how to color whilst coloring Criminal, because until then, the only coloring I'd done is I colored myself on odd bits and then doing illustration, stuff like that. But in terms of like professional comic book pages, I'd never colored anything full color. So I had to sort of figure out how to do that. So I sort of very quickly developed a style, I think, because no one taught me how to do it properly. So I've got no idea if I'm doing it right. It's all just sort of like, oh, I guess I'll do this, and then I'll try that and sort of see what happens. But a lot of it was built on what Brightweiser and everyone who coloured my dad before had done. It's sort of adding to that and building on it, and seeing what I liked in each one and taking that. I think a lot of it works well for his style of artwork. So
yeah, but now it's funny because most people associate you with the new generation of criminal comics, in the sense that we can feel your presence with this sort of layered colors that surrounds the characters and passes through them. It's become some sort of a signature for you and for them.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you don't want to be a colorist for other people.
No, yeah, I don't. It was never like a career choice. It was mostly just originally because I was doing freelance illustration and sort of gigging that kind of world. It was just another job. Like, it wasn't like, oh, this is my new career. It was just another job and a way to make money. So it is, it's a relatively steady way to make money as well, because I know that it's always going to be another book. Which also means that I can go and make my own comics, which make nowhere near as much money. So it's all like, none of it was ever like, oh, I really want to be a colorist. Most of it's just like, I need to make a living and this is how I can do it. And it turns out that I'm all right at it. It was never like, I don't plan ahead for anything. I sort of take it as it comes and see what happens. And I don't have like a big plan for my career. It's just like, I'll keep drawing comics as long as people want me to draw comics, and I'll keep coloring until my dad says stop coloring in.
But would you say that coloring your father's work opened some doors to you in the industry, or
I think so. I think in terms of the first book we had out was That Texas Blood, and in that I didn't mention, like in the pitch and our submission to Image, I didn't mention who I was. I think at the time, I don't know if Junkies had come out yet. So I don't know if Eric at Image knew who I was particularly. He obviously, I guess he would have known I was my dad's son. But we didn't sort of go in like, this is the son of Sean Phillips doing his thing. I never wanted to do that, but I think it definitely helps, because I think having the opportunity to actually colour those books as well puts my name out to the audience. So, and there's a lot of crossover, I think. And if you like criminal, you'll probably like what I do. So it's sort of, you have a slightly like built-in audience for it then, because it's like, oh, well, he's done this. I like the color on it. I'll go and buy his book. So I think there's obviously advantages to it. But I'm hoping that's not all there is. Yeah.
So you've made Texas Blood with Chris Condon.
Yeah.
Who I think you met for comment on dit un court-métrage déjà? Short movie?
Yeah.
Short film.
Yeah. So he was trying to get what ended up being the first issue of Texas Blood, which is a sort of standalone, self-contained little issue. That was meant to be a short film. So he got me, he saw my work in the back of Kill or Be Killed. I was doing the illustrations for the essays, so he was reading that and saw my work and said, oh, he got in touch with me and said, do you want to do some concept artwork for it? So I did 5 digital paintings to try and get funding for the film. And then the film never happened. And he came back to me and said, I don't know why I'm trying to make a film when I've got a comic artist here. And I like, he was always into comics. He's like, maybe we should just make this into a comic. I was like, okay. And then I assumed, so we did a sort of pitch, and I'd done a few of these sample pitches for different writers, and they never get picked up because they're always terrible. So I assumed this would also be terrible and it would never get picked up. And then he sent me the script and it was good. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. It will still never happen. So we sent it out to 5 or 6 different publishers and heard nothing. Well, we either heard no or we heard nothing. And then 6 months later, Eric at Image emailed us saying, oh, if you've not got anywhere for this yet, I've just seen it. It looks great. We'll have it if you want it. So we ended up at Image, which is what we wanted in the first place, really. Like, it's the best option for us, I think, in terms of American publishers. So yeah, it just happened to go that way, and then I ended up accidentally drawing comics. So,
but like the other editors at which you submitted your work were a smaller publisher than Image Comics, or not?
No, we submitted them at other places like Dark Horse and Boom and that. But Image was like the biggest one that we had submitted to.
Do you feel like you maybe found what came to be now your sort of definitive style through that Texas Blood? Because for listeners who might not know the series, it starts out like No Country for Old Men, Longmire, neo-noir, modern western. Then it shifts through gangster story. Then it's more like a Fargo story with a serial killer on top. And I feel like your style keeps on evolving. Through what ends up looking like Newburn eventually. So how did you approach drawing on a monthly basis and shifting to your way of art?
It's interesting because I think with Newburn, I actually started drawing that not long after I started drawing Texas Blood. When Chip asked me to draw Newburn, Texas Blood hadn't come out yet. He had no idea that it was even coming out. So I sort of, like, when I look at Newburn now, the early issues, I can really see how much I've improved since then. I think in that book, you can sort of see sort of the progression. And I think with Texas Blood, you can see it from volume to volume, because I think each volume, it sort of shifts in terms of the sort of style of story. So I tried to shift the style of artwork to suit it. So in the first volume, it's all digital, everything's digital. And then in the second volume, all the modern day stuff is digital, and the 1981 stuff is all traditional inks. Because I tried to make it so it's visually different, so you can sort of tell where you are, and the coloring style is different as well, so you can sort of easily tell where you are in the story. And I also thought it'd just be less boring to do it that way. You know, like for myself, rather than sitting at my computer all day, I was like, oh, I'll start doing some real drawing. So I thought that'd be fun. And then with the latest arc, it's all digital again. But I tried to do sort of, I wanted to look a little bit like it was shot on like VHS, like kind of thing, like it was on tape, with like sort of like a grainy texture to it. Just because it's set in the 90s, I was like, oh, it'd be cool if it was like a 90s slasher. And then like that, and the idea of sort of like maybe like slightly like it had been photocopied, that kind of thing, like slightly distressed. I thought would be cool. So I was just like, each time it's just like, oh, I can try something new rather than just doing the same thing over and over. Which, you know, Chris's stories really help with that, because I can shift with him.
And so because you're still at the beginning of your career, so I guess you really want also to challenge yourself maybe and experiment through different art styles before maybe doing the same stuff when you're older.
Exactly, yeah. I think it's fun to try different things. Like, I don't want to just start one way, then I'm like, right, I have to draw like this for the next 60 years. It's like I want to keep it fresh for myself and for the people reading it. Like, I've just started drawing this new book that got announced on the weekend with Francis Ford Coppola is doing his new film.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
But whilst we're on the subject of style, I'll just quickly mention it. It's because I'm doing that in watercolor. I'm doing sort of more like I do the covers for Newburn. They're doing that sort of that grayscale and doing that for the pages, which takes a long time. So I've not got very far. But it's that again. It's just because it's like, oh well, this is a limited thing. You know, it's probably gonna be at 100 pages. So it's like, oh, I don't have to do it forever. I can just do it for 100 pages. You know, it takes me maybe a year, and after that, I don't have to do it. If I don't like it, I don't have to do it again. So it's just an excuse to sort of try new things constantly and see what works and what I like and what I don't like. So it's just, you know, trying to keep it interesting for myself.
On the matter of your influences, we can tell that there's obviously some Sean Phillips in there, but you have also these thick contours on the characters and something that goes through realism and minimalism, which I think looks kind of like John Paul Leon at some points in Newburn, or maybe like Tommy Lee Edwards also on that Texas Blood. Do you think like you have some sort of affiliation through these artists?
I think so. Like, yeah, John Paul Leon especially. I think because I've got that that big edition of the Winterman that came out recently, the black and white one, on my desk all the time. Like, it's like just next to me whilst I draw, because there's so much in that, especially like his backgrounds and stuff like that, the way that he sort of simplifies shapes, but it's got that sort of realistic edge to it, which I like, but it's stylized. So I'm constantly stealing stuff from him. But then someone like Tonchi Zonjic, like his line work and stuff like that, like I'd love all that stuff as well. So I'm totally stealing from him as well. It's just whatever I've just read is normally what I'm stealing from. I think it all informs it. I think in these new Burns that I've been drawing, which aren't out yet, is the line work again sort of shifts a little bit further away from how it started, and you can sort of see it go through as it progresses. But I'm hoping it gets better. But there's my influence is always just sort of like, what have I just seen? What have I just read? What have I just watched? Like all that sort of stuff is like constantly, like you say, I'm still early on, so I'm still sort of figuring out what I want it to look like, I guess.
When we had Chip Zdarsky here, he told us that the challenge for Newburn was to to have the story been told in 16 pages format and have a whole show, a full detective show episode in this format. And I think this minimalism and the way that you go to the essential in every panel makes it really fluid. And in the same way, we can feel that Newburn's design and looks is actually like a real life character inside the pages. So what was your approach on this challenge that you had to put a whole story through just one issue?
I think because of that, I'm sort of forced to do that. I think because there's so much to fit on each page, because some pages are 8 or 9 panels a page, which is a lot to, with dialogue as well, is a lot to fit in. So I'm sort of like, well, I can't fit anything other than a face in. It's like you have to have an establishing shot for the scene and that kind of thing, and have a few backgrounds to make sure you know where you are. But other than that, it's like, what is the easiest way I can tell the story so it makes it as clear as possible, even though there's so much stuff on the page, which is quite good because I'm quite lazy and I don't like drawing backgrounds. So it's, I like the stuff that I really like is all the character acting stuff, like the facial expressions and the positioning of characters and that kind of thing. So yes, and like it's the same with Texas Blood. Like I love all that sort of stuff. That's stuff that actually really interests me. Like I don't particularly want to draw like people bending and flying through the sky and like all that sort of stuff. I don't think I'd be very good at it. So this, I think the challenge for me with Newburn is the fact that he has like no facial expressions and no like emotion really. Like he's quite like calm and angry all the time. So trying to sort of subtly show what he's thinking, what he's feeling without overacting is quite a fun challenge. Because I think in general in comics you have to overact to sell whatever it is they're doing, compared to sort of like in film or whatever, it's a lot more subtle. So yeah, trying to sort of rein all that in for him but keep all the other characters still acting is quite a fun challenge. So it's quite a challenging book to try and figure out. But I have sort of shortcuts as well in terms of it's on a grid. Every page is on a 9-panel grid, so straight away I can only have so many different variations on panels. So that makes it instantly simpler to figure out. Most of it is just trying to figure out how to make it clear to the reader, I think.
And did it take time to figure out how Newburn would look? Because he's at first glance he's immediately striking. Is this something that you had to really work and discuss with Chip, or was it really easy to design?
I had a follow up on that. In Texas Blood, we can identify some Sam Elliott character, and in general, I'm sorry for the comparison, but in the criminal comics, you have this feeling of, this guy looks like somebody I know, which I've seen on TV or in the movies. Did you have, because you said character acting, did you have specific actors or characters from pulp or dark noir fiction that you had in mind for these heroes?
For Newburn, I think Chip originally said he should look like, what's his name? The Mad Men guy.
John Hamm?
Yeah, John Hamm. Like an older version of John Hamm. Which I sort of did, but also sort of enough. Like, I think he's meant to sort of look like almost like classically handsome, like square jaw, buff. He's got that sort of classic slick back hair with the grey temples. That was also there. I don't know whether it's in the French edition or not, but in the American one, there's early character designs. I don't know if you've got them in there. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's a bit more
John Hamish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was sort of going for like more of like a 40s film star kind of look for him. But then I don't think he looked like hard enough, so I had to make him bigger and bulkier and a bit more intimidating. But mostly they just sort of look like me, but with like a tweaked thing. Because I shoot photo reference for everything, so I'm like in every pose. So they've all got like short legs like me, and they all but usually it's like I come up with like a shortcut from how do I get from that face to this face. So it's like, square the jaw off, and his hairline goes like that, not like that. So it's just trying to keep him on model throughout the whole thing is part of it as well. So I think each character gets sort of slightly simplified as it goes on and more stylized, because you come up with these shortcuts for everything. And like, his black coat and suit, it's just a black silhouette every time, which I think I don't do on any of the other characters really. So it makes him quite sort of distinctive in the image as well. So yeah, there's all these like sort of shortcuts to making him look sort of, to make him stand out against everyone else, I guess.
In something that's common to that Texas Blood, which has the Texas environment, and Newburn, who has New York. Mm-hmm. You're from the UK.
Yeah,
I guess you've been to New York quite some time.
I've never been to New York.
You've never been to New York?
No, but I've been to Texas now.
Okay.
When I started, I hadn't been to Texas.
All right. So that was my question. How do you compose? Because you said you don't like to draw backgrounds, but the city is an important part
it's
of
really
the story
difficult.
here.
It's, I try and avoid it. Well, in the new ones, I've been trying to do it more. I've been trying to make an effort to really try on the backgrounds. But yeah, mostly it's just like a lot of Google and like, driving around on Street View and stuff like that. That's what I did for Texas. Because the benefit of Texas Blood is that it's in a fictional part of Texas. So it doesn't have to look exactly like anything, but it's based on like a few different towns in West Texas. So I can sort of Google those and take bits and mash them together and change it around. So there's, it is difficult. It's difficult to get the scale of things, I think, because it's, especially Texas, like everything's huge. Everything's like really spaced out. And whereas like the UK and I think in France as well, everything's a lot tighter, packed together, and
smaller.
Yeah, everything's just smaller. Like
we can say it.
Yeah,
it's not a matter of size. Anyway.
Well, yeah, like Texas is bigger than England, so it's just a tiny bit of the country. So, but everything is just like when I went to Texas, I drove from Austin to West Texas. I went down to Big Bend National Park in the south, and then went up to Martha and Fort Davis, which is sort of where the book is set. So I spent a week there. But just driving through Texas is insane because you just don't see anything for hours and hours. And there's just, the roads are just straight and there's no one on them. It's unlike anything that I see at home. Whereas New York is slightly easier because I live in Manchester and a lot of Manchester looks like old New York. So like, especially at street level, you can sort of get away with taking bits of Manchester and putting it there. So it's, again, though, it's just like finding the shortcuts to do it and everything because you have to do it so many times. Like every page will have a shot of a location on it, at least one. Not as much as like in French books where everything is on every panel, but it's, you have to find like a way of not letting it take you a week to do a page, because I'm on a monthly deadline. So
That was another question I had. Your father and Ed Brubaker came to be some sort of revolutionists in the use of graphic novel.
Mm.
You know, like nowadays, Image Comics does more and more graphic novels, but they only want to do that. Is it something because the monthly rhythm, I suppose, it's tiring?
Yeah.
Did you ever want to do this format in?
Oh yeah, I think they just stole it from European comics. It's just, you know, you guys have been doing it forever, and it makes sense.
But it's shorter.
Yeah,
we do it shorter.
Yeah, I would like to do that. I think it's, having a monthly deadline is tiring because I take breaks between each series, so like I have about 6 months off between doing Texas Blood and 6 months off between doing New Burn, where I swap and do the other one. But it means that I don't always have a deadline. I've just finished drawing issue 11, but I've got no deadline for that because it doesn't come out for 3-4 months still. And then by the time I get to the end, then I'm up against a deadline. So you sort of, it catches up on you, but you have a little bit of a head start. I don't know if I could do just a monthly comic with no break. I think would be really, really difficult. Even though I'm quite quick, I think it's still, it's just tiring to do. I don't like working long days either. I work quite short days for a comic artist. So it's, I don't envy being on like a monthly Marvel book or something like that. I would love to do
So you're not going to draw Amazing Spider-Man?
Unless you want a really bad Amazing Spider-Man book. I don't think I'd be very good at that.
A very grounded Spider-Man.
Yeah,
that
I'd love to do that.
In the streets. Yeah.
I would love to do a story like that. I'd love to do like a Lois Lane story, something like that. It's like
Greg Rucka did, or even you could do a Spider-Man noir, maybe.
Yeah. I would love to do something like that. Like all the DC Black Label stuff I really like. I'd happily do something like that. Me and Chris have just done a short story with DC, which I don't think has been announced yet, so I don't know if I can talk about it on the podcast. I'll tell you after. But just like a short 10-pager, which I was like, oh, this would be fun. I get to try and draw superheroes, and it's like, no, I won't, because Chris is writing it, and there's no superhero stuff in it at all. It's all like people driving around and all the stuff that I normally draw.
Speaking and reading magazines.
Yeah,
you could do Daredevil.
I would love to do Daredevil.
He's a polar entry character.
Yeah, I would love to do that. It's
Jessica Jones.
Yeah, I think there is a way to do it all, and like with Human Target at the moment is such a beautiful book, and that's got sort of superhero elements in it, but mostly it's just people walking around and chatting. So like that kind of thing, I'd love to do.
It's a funny example because Tom King was known for a time as the superhero / noir guy, and then he went to do Love Everlasting, which is more like a romance type. Do you have some desires to fulfill around the genres, or do you just want to do neo-noir?
Well, me and Chris are doing for the next Texas Blood thing, we're doing a sort of, it's going to be a new #1, and we're doing a Texas Blood spin-off, which is like a proper old Western. So a bit more. So that's like, I guess it's still in the same kind of, it's still a crime Western, but it's
people with guns.
But it's in the past. So it's slightly more leaning into the sort of Western genre than the neo-Western genre. And that's as far as I'll go. But no, I don't know. I'd quite like to do like a horror book, that kind of thing. But
you had your horror moment with the Red Queen Killer.
Yeah, that's true.
Red Queen Killer. I'm sorry.
But I'd hate to do sci-fi because I can't draw any of that stuff. Maybe if I could like do sci-fi in a way that doesn't have computers in it and like stuff that's hard to draw. But I mean, I'm quite happy to sort of do whatever. But it's just finding the story within that genre, I guess, is the important thing.
Or maybe you have also a writer that you really want to work with.
Not really. Like, because mostly I read comics for the artist anyway. Like there's loads of artists that I want to get to do covers for us and stuff like that. But in terms of writers, I'm not that, like Chris is like, well, and Chip as well are like my favorite writers. So it's like, I've sort of looked out straight away and I'm like, oh, I like working with these guys. So I'll just keep working with these guys. There's not really, that many writers that I'm like, oh, I wish I could do something. I like reading all their stuff, but I'm like,
I have one in mind.
Oh yeah,
his name is Francis Ford Coppola. Because before we planned, we didn't know, but we planned this podcast ahead, and then on the weekend it was announced at the WonderCon that Francis Ford Coppola was putting into comics his movie Megalopolis.
It was like Friday or Saturday night at midnight, you know. So I was just like, hey, Quentin, look at this. We're gonna interview this guy in 2 days.
So can we talk about that?
Yeah,
maybe
a little bit.
Yes. That's a weird one, because I got an email from, so Chris Ryle is the guy who's adapting the script for me. So he's the editor and sort of co-writing it, I guess. So he's taken the film script and he's currently, and I've already started drawing it, but he's still working on the script for the comic. So sort of adapting it into something usable for myself. Because Coppola wrote it for himself to direct. So there's like nothing in the script in terms of direction. It's all just like really vague, and I have to then figure out how to make it work. Like there's like stuff with like stopping time, and I'm like, how do I do that in comics? It's just like somehow time has stopped. I'm like, great. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff where I'm like, a lot of it is just figuring out how to convert it into a comic. And because I think they finished filming it now, but I've not seen any of that stuff.
But are you going to see?
They've sent
before drawing.
Well, I've drawn 10 pages of it.
Okay, so
and basically he said it doesn't have to look like it. So it'd be interesting to see when they're both out side by side how different they are. I think they could be like wildly different things, which should be fun. I think that's sort of the point of it. I don't think, because otherwise he would have just got me to draw it after the film came out, I guess, and copy it. But that would be kind of pointless, I guess. But
do you know why he came to Syzygy and Image Comics?
No idea.
There were rumors that the movie was a bit of a production nightmare.
Yeah.
So maybe he wanted to have a more free version.
Yeah, maybe. So I got asked to do it about 6 months ago. And then I started drawing it in December. And then I think, was it in January that all these things came out about the production? And I just got an email from Chris, because I don't talk to Coppola. I haven't got a direct line.
Not yet.
Yeah. So I just talked to Chris, and Chris emailed me like, just so you know, it's all fine. Like, it's still happening. Like, ignore all the rumors. I'm like, okay, I'll keep drawing. Yeah, it's just strange. Yeah. Well, yeah, I didn't even finish what I started with before, but yeah, I got an email saying, do you want to work with, this director? And I was like,
yeah,
I don't know who. They wouldn't tell me who it was until I sort of said I was interested in doing it. They sort of said, "Oh, it's going to be 100 pages or whatever." He's an award-winning writer director, and you can sort of do what you want with it. And I was like, I guess this sounds interesting. Like, who could it possibly be? And then, they told me it was Coppola, and I was like, oh, wasn't expecting that. So yeah, it's just pretty wild to be able to do it. It's not quite like, it doesn't seem like a thing, because I don't talk to him directly as well. It almost just feels like it's nothing.
Sure, but do you feel the pressure of being associated to his name?
Oh yeah,
because if the graphic novel is bad, you're going to pay for it. You know that's what. Are you still quite sleeping at nights?
It is stressful. Like I said, I'm doing it in like watercolor. Cause I was like, it has to be amazing. It has to be something like really good. And now like, oh, maybe I've sort of psyched myself out of it a bit. I'm like I'm overcomplicating it, putting too much pressure on it. So like my friends, I have a friend who I work with, and she's like my color assistant. So she does all my flats for my colors. So she'll just text me like, stop overthinking it. Just draw the pages. Like, oh, okay, that sounds okay. But yeah, it is weird because it feels like it should be less pressure, because it's almost like it's not my book. I'm just working on it. Whereas with Newburn and Texas Blood, they are my books. So it should be the other way around. I should feel the pressure on those, but I feel a lot more relaxed with that because I'm like, oh, I'm just doing my thing. Whereas this is like,
but he's giving you the freedom to make it your own in a way.
But it's still.
You want to make it your own?
I don't know. I guess so. I want it to look like I've done it. I want to, and a lot of the sort of storytelling stuff is I've got to do quite a lot of heavy lifting on it to make it into a comic. I think from a film, even though Chris has adapted it, a lot of it is still sort of open to interpretation on a lot of what's happening and how to do it. So yeah, it's definitely got a lot of me in it. I think it's hopefully be good.
And the thing is, it's going to get a lot of to get some attractions from a broader audience. And, we've seen like some kind of trend, with movie stars and or movie directors doing comic books. Do you feel there's a trend?
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's that Keanu Reeves one recently, wasn't there? With the
Berserker.
Like the good. I think the good thing about it is that it's already a film, so they're not doing it to make it into a film, which is what it seems like is not normally happening. They're like, oh, we'll do it as a comic, and then we'll sell that, and it will get made into a film. So at least they're not doing that, I guess, and it feels a bit more sort of for the sake of the art kind of thing. It's like they actually want to. It seems like he thinks, oh, it'll be an interesting thing to do. Let's do that, rather than trying to make money off it, because it's not going to be the money maker out of that and the film, is it? So.
But isn't it something that would interest you? Because Newburn or Texas Blood, which started from a short film, so aren't you interested in adaptations of your work?
Yeah, I think so. Like we actually sold Newburn, and then we sold it to Netflix, and they gave it back because they had, everything's changed at Netflix recently.
Layoffs. And,
so we've heard
cancellations.
So they gave it back to us, so now we need to sell it again. But we've sold Texas Blood as well, and that's sort of starting to sort of pick up some steam. So hopefully that's going to be a TV show. So hopefully it'll actually happen. We'll see. But I think it'd be interesting to see, but mostly it's just like I don't care that much about it being a TV show. I'm more like I want as many people to see the book as I can. So it's like the more people that know about it, the better, I guess. So I guess it can only be a good thing, unless it's really bad, the TV show, and then it sort of puts people off reading the book. I guess you got to take that gamble a bit, haven't you?
But did you hear that from your readers? Like, are they asking you, wow, this would be so good if it was a TV show? Because you have a universe that conveys this imagery of films and TVs and shows.
I think Newburn feels like it feels like a TV show because it's sort of
even in the narrative structure, because it's done like a procedural
case of the week.
Exactly. And I think the way that, because Chris is also really into film, a lot of his influence comes from that side of things, which you can definitely tell that, that sort of Coen Brothers kind of stuff is very obvious in the book. And like my style is quite sort of cinematic as well. So I think people automatically are like, oh, this would be a good TV show or whatever, like sort of, like Fargo or that kind of, that sort of slow burn. Yeah. So I think people would like it, I guess. And I think it'd be cool to see, but it's just like, I think mostly, again, it'd just be interesting to compare the two. Like see like what especially because obviously a lot of it's come from my head, and it's like how their thinking is different from mine, I think would be really cool. Just like, I guess it'd be fun to watch. I don't know if I'd be able to watch it and enjoy it. I'd be like thinking about everything and comparing it. So I don't know. Maybe it'll be fun.
When Megalopolis is going to come out, you're going to see the movie and you're going to be different in your head.
I know. I'm going to be like, oh, this is all the stuff I should have done and I didn't do. Or like, oh, this is terrible. Mine's way better. It'll be interesting to see the film, I think, once. Hopefully I'll finish the book in time. I don't know. And I didn't actually watch or read the announcement of the book, so I don't know what they said. I don't know if they gave a date for when it comes out, but
No, they didn't.
That's all right then, because I don't know if it's meant to come out at the same time or anything. I'm not really... They haven't really given me a deadline. They were like, if you could do like 10 pages a month, maybe that'd be good. I'm like, okay.
All right.
So we'll see if it... I guess it will come out at a similar time to the film. I'm not sure, but...
that would be some kind of logic.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And how about writing your own comic books in the future?
I don't know if I'd be very good at it. I don't know. I have like the odd thing where I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea. But mostly I'm like, that's a cool idea. Maybe I'll give it to Chris and he can write it. I just don't know if I could do it. But then also, I guess I haven't tried, so I don't.
That could be another way to challenge yourself.
Yeah, but I think also it would be like when I've...
And if you're not good with the dialogues, you could do a silent book.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think the issue is like I spend the day drawing comics. I don't want to go home and try and write a comic. Like it's finding the time to do it and it be a valuable use of like work time. Because obviously whenever I'll be writing, I wouldn't be drawing. And then if it turns out to be nothing, then I've just wasted weeks of my life doing nothing. So I guess it's like committing to it would be, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm interested enough in doing it to actually pursue it. We'll see.
You're mentioning the time problem. So right now you're doing more and more comics as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
There's still Newburn, there's still Texas Blood, and there's Megalopolis. Do you think you'll still have the time to color the criminal books or anything that goes through?
I think so, because basically the way now that it's graphic novels, it's much easier to manage the time, because before obviously I'd have to stop drawing every month to color a comic, which would take me a week to color an issue, whereas now it's like every 6 months I take a month and I color the whole thing at once, right at the last minute. And Ed hates it, so like he'll sort of email maybe a month before it has to be done, saying, have you started yet? I'm like, no. And then I do like 100 pages in a month, and it pays well as well, like compared to, I think I made more money off Newburn coming out in French than I did off like Texas Blood coming out in English. Well. So it's it's difficult to make enough money off, like every 6 months I get a royalty thing with my trade sales and all that sort of stuff, but like in terms of a monthly comic, it's really hard to make any money on it. So coloring basically pays for me to be able to do that. That's my like sort of steady income, and then the rest can sort of, it doesn't really matter how much it makes. It does for Chris, but because it has to sort of depends on his book selling, but like it's sort of, it takes the weight off having to sell loads of my own book. So I think I sort of need to do it, and also I enjoy doing it. It's fun to work on something that isn't quite as sort of mine. I get to just sort of play around on it a bit more. So
takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
It's funny because I can feel we can see the evolution of Sean Phillips' art since you came around.
Oh, right.
I think he relies a little more on you that he did with.
Maybe. I think there's a lot. Yeah, especially with sort of Reckless, I think, because it's a lot less heavy blacks than he used to do and stuff like that. I think, hopefully he just sort of trusts me to do it now. I think it was a relief especially for Ed when I turned out to be like good at it. I think he was sort of quite nervous because obviously I'd never done anything before, and they were like, "Here's a book to color." So I think he was a bit like, "Oh, what if he's terrible?" But luckily it sort of turned out quite well, I think.
Luckily,
yeah,
good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you once again for your time, Jacob Phillips. I'm going to do the outro in French again. Donc, merci de nous avoir écoutés. C'est la fin de cette interview. On rappelle que si vous appréciez ces podcasts, vous pouvez les partager sur les réseaux sociaux afin de faire découvrir l'émission, mais aussi les travaux des artistes et des auteurs qui passent dans le podcast. Donc, on vous rappelle que New Burn tome 1, c'est disponible chez Urban Comics et que Texas Blood, c'est chez Delcourt. Il y a des liens dans la description de ce podcast si vous voulez vous les procurer chez nos amis de Comics Zone. Merci Corentin d'avoir été là pour ce Super Friends. On vous souhaite une très bonne, merci de nous avoir écoutés et à très bientôt pour le prochain podcast. Bye Jacob.
Bye. Thank you for having me.